Welcome to another adventure on this Rust server. My name is Siberius and I just started playing on this server not too long ago. I thought it wouldn't be anything special, but I ended up gathering a lot of loot along the way and decided it was worth doing a wipe here. I started by recycling the equipment I found along the road at the fishing village. I checked the map and noticed a cool island that could be the place to my new base. I quickly grabbed the boat and went to the island, thinking it was a perfect place to build my base. This server is a Battlezone x2 solo only with no blueprint wipe. While I'm here, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for the support shown in the last videos that I post. I truly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. If you like this type of content and want to support my channel, you can begin by give a like and subscribing. It really helps a lot. And let's continue the video. I began by exploring the island and killing some animals to gather low-grade fuel for making furnaces. I set up a refinery to melt and convert it to low-grade fuel, conveniently close to home. Then I started gathering wood to begin building my house. I noticed that there was a cave, but it had spikes at the entrance, so I decided it wasn't worth the effort. And now here's a montage of the construction of my base. After having my base secure with the TC, the Easter event popped up. It's an event where we collect eggs, which can be exchanged for in-game items. I went to collect some eggs and then on my very first round of egg collecting, I got a jackhammer, which made my farming a lot easier for me. After farming a bit, it was time to start building the honeycomb for the house. I made some more small upgrades, fueled the furnaces and also made some adjustments inside the base. It was then that, while I was upgrading the roof of my house, a guest appeared. Since I didn't have a way to defend myself, I retreated inside the house and started making some more small adjustments. I upgraded my core to metal and crafted a level 1 workbench. After a while, I returned to upgrade the upper part of my house to finish what I had started. Since we are close to the river, right next to the water, I thought it would be appropriate to grow some berries and make some teas, and possibly sell them in the vending machine. After more and more changes, it was time to finish the roof. And with the roofs and the honeycomb done, it was time to take care of the interior of the base. I learned the BPs to the electrical and plumbing systems and started to set up my farm. And after that arrangements, I went on a scrap run, taking advantage of the fact that I live near the fishing village. So, with all the conditions in place, I started by placing the plant boxes. And with the help of the mixing table, I started making sulfur. Now we're talking. It looks like a decent car to me. Let's just move the workbench here. It looks better on this side. And voila! When the sun went out, I used the leftover scrap to research some clothing and also started planting my first berries. I didn't go crazy with genetics because for now I just wanted to have berries in quantity. Despite my area not being weak in resources and food, with plenty of pumpkins and corn, it was important to kill animals for their leather. When I got home, I started to cook some meat and craft some new clothes. And back at my plant box, the genetics of the berries weren't great, but for now they served their purpose. And it was with the help of a bucket and water bottles that I fetched water from the river to pour onto the plant box. This way I could reach the necessary water level for the berries to have a favorable percentage. As I played throughout this first day of the wipe, I noticed that I already had some neighbors. So I went to explore my nearest neighbor to see what he was up to. I tried to get close, but I didn't hear anything. Not a soul could be heard. I backed off a bit, but still nothing. And I went back home. And as the night fell, I did some more honeycombing and fortified my base even more. I made more rooms to place more plant boxes. I put a furnace in that exact spot to make a jump up to help me get up. And as you already know, it was time for some more upgrades. And so, almost without noticing, my berries were already bearing fruit. Well, some berries had already undergone a crossbreed that didn't go very well. I decided to eat some berries and plant them again to see if I hit the jackpot. But it wasn't yet. So I took this opportunity to do another scrap run and go to the fishing village. At home, with my high hopes, I hid some berries and planted them in the plant box to see if I was lucky. Turns out it wasn't this time either, so I got rid of those and started crafting the blueprint for the boom to be able to raid our neighbor. And then, after so many attempts, I got a completely green clone. Perfect. I finalized the electrical system for the many rooms I added to my base and put some more plant boxes. While I was admiring the clones of my berries, I accidentally made a misclick and did a harvest haul. A small mistake that cost me quite dearly because I didn't have many clones of them yet. So well, I decided to save the remaining one, which fortunately wasn't harvested. In the meantime, I researched the revolver and the bullets, as it's a much needed weapon at its face. And it seems the Easter Bunny was quite generous with me. I opened a silver egg and got a DB. Pretty cool, huh? While I wasn't recording, I had a meeting with another player to meet at the outpost for a trade. I needed a bean can grenade to craft satchels, and he said he would give me a bean can to research in exchange for 350 sulfur. So I wanted to take the minicopter because it was a bit too far, but things didn't go very well. Because of the lack of my flying skill, I had to go barefoot to the outpost. Nevertheless, the trade went smoothly and it was all very peaceful. finally I had the bean can, and I could research it without risking dying on the way home and losing it. As soon as I got home, I went to visit my crops, crafted more satchels, and then with 7 satchels in my pocket, it was time to start the raid. My gut feeling told me that, given the shape of the base, the TC would be on that wall. But things didn't go very well the first time. Then I went back to finish the job. But it seems that 7 satchels aren't enough to bring down the stone wall. Miscalculations that cost me dearly. So this incomplete raid forced me to return home, grab some pickaxes, swords and other tools to do an echo raid on the rest of the wall.
You got a tight little man pussy on you, don't you?
Killed by a dark camper with an M92 pistol. Completely unexpected and a bit cowardly. On a server like this, doing dark camping, kind of meh. But oh well, I might have done the same. Anyway, let's get back to our story. After being very careful, I returned to the base I was trying to raid and saw that, for now, with my resources, I couldn't do anything. So I just went on with my life. With the berries I had been planting, I was already be able to start making some teas. With the perfect clone of the yellow berry already achieved, my challenge now was to get a perfect clone of the other berries. And it was then that on my first attempt to plant white berries, I got a perfect clone. During these times, I kept repeating the process of planting, cloning, planting again, harvesting and also collecting the clones into the chest. After all this time, what was missing still was a perfect clone of the blue and red berry, something that would happen a little later. And still, without a plan for the plumbing of the farm, I had to resort to the manual method, going to the river with buckets and pouring water into the plant boxes. Even before the blue berry, it was time to find a perfect clone for the red berry. This clone was truly perfect because it had 3 Gs, which meant it grew much faster than the others. I also continued to make some more teas, because tea is life. Tea Gaitamo. At this point I already had plenty of clones of the 3 main berries. Still missing the blue one, I decided to expand my farm. And now here's a montage of me making teas and growing my crops. Without much of a fuss, I already had a chest with some teas. Some basic, some advanced, but I still didn't have any pure tea. So I decided to drink an advanced or tea and start farming some minerals to take advantage of the boost and fill the furnaces. And I did the same later on to farm wood. I drank a basic wood tea, grabbed the chainsaw and got to work. This window was bothering me a lot, so I decided to make a honeycomb and make other small upgrades to my house. Still with 2 bad clones of blueberries, my search continued, so I decided to keep upgrading the base. Now I decided to drink my first scrap tea, and I went to hit the road, break some barrels and recycle at the fishing village. I returned home and researched blueprints for materials I needed through this wipe. I crafted some bandages and revolver bullets, drank a health tea, and with 112 maximum health, I head towards the tunnels. But I noticed that there was already another neighbor with an even larger base next to mine, so I decided to investigate. Since I didn't see anything suspicious and there were no noises, I figured out they were offline, and I continued my mission. With the tea providing more health, coupled with the tea enable a great increase on scrap, this trip to the tunnels was much more worthwhile, and I returned home with a full inventory. As I was tired of constantly going to the river to fetch water jugs, I ended up making a water catcher and placed it on the roof. I also set up a water barrel so I could collect water to feed all my plant boxes. I organized the entire plumbing system and the system started working right away. While all this was happening, I still longed for a perfect clone of the blueberry. That's when I had an eureka moment. There it was, a perfect clone of the blueberry, finally. And so I went back to making teas. Many more teas and even more teas. I placed a new chest just for the berries. As the progress of the teas advanced, I was collecting more and more pure teas, which would be very convenient for me in the future. I drank a pure scrap tea and went to the sea for scrap and components. But then an unfortunate event happened. As I was about to get off the boat, I forgot to turn it off, and as soon as I jumped, the boat kept moving without me. Oh well, it is what it is. After dealing with that whole situation, I swam back to the shore, and I walked to the fishing village to recycle the components. Once I arrived at the fishing village, since I already had some scrap with me, I crafted a chest and hid it in the bushes, hoping no one would see me placing my loot here. And I kept doing more scrap runs, keeping an eye out. After all this, I grabbed what was in the chest and it was time to go home. Later on, I grabbed the jackhammer, drank some teas for the farm boost, and went to mine some stone. Once my inventory was full, it was time to return home and fill the furnaces. Then I ended up doing the same with wood. I drank a wood tea and took advantage of the boost to grab the chainsaw and gather wood. I made some more upgrades to the base. After all this time, and although I didn't try anything too special, I still hadn't managed to get a perfect imp clone. But what I planted I ended up harvesting, and I was happy with that. With the extra metal fragments in my base, I took the opportunity to fortify the walls of my house. I drank another scrap tea and hit the road, or should I say, hit the sea. And I ended up going to the lighthouse for the first time. Very carefully, I tried not to make too much noise with the boat because I could have unexpected visitors. But I soon saw that no one had looted yet, so it was most likely that I was alone. And after this adventure at the lighthouse, when I got to the boat, I had an interesting surprise. The boat was upside down, but it wasn't a big problem to turn it back around. And I continued the journey home. Since I was already getting too many teas for my own use, I started by placing a vending machine, hoping that players on the server would trade teas for scrap. However, I started by selling only fuel. At a reasonable price, maybe I could acquire a little more scrap that way. And so I placed my first teas in the vending machine. The prices, in my opinion, weren't too crazy. I believe it's a pretty reasonable price. I noticed there was some space next to my vending machine, so I placed another plant box there. Later on, since the small battery was no longer enough to power my farm, I decided it was time to go to the fishing village and buy a large battery through the drone. I also bought a locker to store all the clothes and kits. As soon as I arrived at my core, I noticed that everything was very messy and I needed to remodel the facilities to install the large battery and the locker. And that's what I did. It took some time, but I ended up with a very satisfactory result. Then I swapped the battery and it quickly became operational, receiving energy from the solar panels. As time passed, I kept checking the vending machine to see if anyone had bought some teas, but not yet. For now, the power was inefficient, so it was time for another solar panel. I checked my vending machine, but nothing. At this point I really liked my base, but it lacked a slightly more comfortable touch. Cozy, so to speak. So, since I had a large battery, I thought it would be enough to create a circuit just for the house lighting. And that's exactly what I did. I placed several red industrial lights, finished connecting them to each other, and finally the house had a much cozier atmosphere. The next morning I went to see my neighbor's house and I noticed that the house was in decay. It was almost falling apart, so I decided to wait a bit. I went for a walk to the tunnels and did my course. After this, I did a few more scrap runs and returned home to research the garage doors. I quickly installed them in my base, replacing the metal doors that had been protecting my base so far. It was now time to go for my neighbor's house. I found some things, nothing special so far, but I was able to research some interesting stuff, like the walls. By the time I was recording, I wasn't sure about this shotgun trap, but it was the other way around. Yeah, I'm dumb. I know. I decided to go back to my neighbor's house and discover something spectacular. In this small compartment of the base, there were rows upon rows of stone and metal, enough ore to last for the rest of the wipe. And in one of the small boxes there was also wood for the rest of the wipe. Let's say it was worth the wait. On my way back to my base, I visited the base I tried to raid the other day. but it wasn't decaying yet, so I decided to ignore it. I returned home and started crafting some boom to do something with it. Since I had an electric furnace, I decided to start smelting all the ore we found in the neighbor's house. And as the night fell, I went to blow up the house of our first neighbor, which we failed to raid initially. As I suspected, my intuition was right. The TC was indeed in that wall. I went back home because I forgot the Molotovs, and I went to finish what I had started. We gained some metal fragments and stone, but this raid was a failure. It was a bust. I won't dwell on it too much, but oh well. I decided to adventure into the tunnels once again. I'm getting better at these things, and I'm gaining more confidence each time. Back home, taking advantage of the fact that I had an electric furnace working, I decided to create an automatic piping system to save myself some hassle. So all I had to do was feed the furnace with the ore and the system would pull that ore into the TC. In one of those Easter events, an egg gave me an LR. Awesome, I know. So I decided to pack a kit, bandages, syringe and go for the first time to the small oil rig. And off I went. I was a bit nervous because I wasn't sure what to do exactly. So I started climbing the platform. The first mistake was, right off the bat, not grabbing the Thompson and killing the scientist. I was taking too much damage right away, and anxiety was getting the best of me. But I kept going. Facing the scientists and committing to every second, I tried to complete the mission. But as time went on, more and more scientists showed up. And I ended up failing. Mistakes that cost me some weapons. But hey, there's always a first time for everything, right? Back to the farming life, I guess. A bit later, I went to scout around the fishing village area. I saw a scientist and didn't want to bother him, so I ignored him. However, I got a big scare when another scientist attacked me. I continued to explore the surrounding area, noticing more and more player bases. And I was checking if any of them were worth raiding. This was the last day of the wipe, and I went about my usual routine. I checked if I had been raided, which I hadn't, always a good sign. I checked my crops and the vending machine, and finally noticed some sales. I opened the machine and find 300 scrap waiting for me, which was quite good. Since there wasn't much else to do, I went to the train yard because there was a crate to unlock. While I was passing through, I was interrupted by scientists. I initially thought it was a player, but quickly realized they were NPCs. I dealt with them and went on to unlock the crate. And while the crate was unlocking, I checked out what else the training yard had to offer. But it was mainly encounters with scientists and not much else. Once the crate was finally unlocked, I collected the loot from this mission. Not bad at all. We got some weapons, armor, chest plate and a metal mask. Pretty important stuff to have around. As I was riding home from the training yard on horseback, I stumbled upon a large base. I went to drop the loot to my base and go back. I tried to find an entrance in the darkness of the night, but since I couldn't see anything, I waited until morning to get a better view. I noticed that someone had already raided this base, so I decided to explore it to see if there was any valuable leftovers to take. That's when I found a bolt. It must have been from an auto turret, because I also found a turret on the outside and upon breaking it I discovered another bolt. I climbed up to the roof and noticed some chests, but they were empty. Since we didn't have control over the TC either, I couldn't take the level 3 workbench, which would have been quite useful. It was morning and I could hear the helicopter in the distance, but I didn't realize it was so close. Suddenly the patrol helicopter started shooting. I felt like I was being targeted. Luckily I managed to evade it. I decided to wait a while for it to leave the area before returning home safely with the weapons I had acquired during this exploration. Having just returned home, I began researching the blueprints for the items I had acquired in these last moments of the wipe. Blueprints for the metal chestplate, bolt, scope and other items could prove to be very useful in future videos on this server. And so, in the final moments of this wipe, I decided to put the quality metal I had acquired during this wipe and some of the weapons into the vending machine. And this lasted for some time. There were only a few players online and the server was nearing its end. So I grabbed the weapons and started having fun. And that's it folks, that's how my adventure on this island, on this Rust server came to an end. I want to thank everyone for watching this video. If you watched the video all the way through, please leave a like and subscribe because it really helps the channel. I also want to thank, once again, all the support and love you've shown me with the videos I've been putting out. At the moment we are over 50 subscribers, thank you very much. Let's aim for 100 together guys. Oh my god, I'm so stupid. Siberius signing out.